We're now going to study Zion Amid Beis, the second half of the daf for today. And let's just review on daf Yud Zion Amid Aleph on the Gemara of Minolan. And the Gemara wants to know, how do we know that Stam's Naziris Shloshim Yom, Omar Kra Yeh, Begamatria Talsin Havi. The Gemara then asks on this derivation from Nazir, Amalei Rav Papa Labai Vidilma Hachi Kamar Achmana Lo Lirbu Klal. Maybe he shouldn't grow his hair at all, and he would have to cut his hair on a daily basis. Amalei Sabai responded, Iavi Kosav Lo Yishalechu Pera Kidduka Amrit. If it would have had the verb first and the noun second, then I would say, like you asked me, maybe there should be an Isser of Gidol Seyar at all. And you're not allowed to grow any hair at all. You'd have to take a haircut on a daily basis. And that would be the implication of Lo Yishalechu Pera. But Hashta, Dichsiv, Upara, Upera Lo Yishalechu, therefore Pera Lehevi and Shluchehu Delo Shalche. The saros could be Pera, that means up to 30 days, but he should not grow his hair more than 30 days. I'm sorry, so the Gemara asks now, if the chiv of the Kohen Hedjot is to take a haircut once every 30 days, then that should apply even today, after the Churban Beis HaMikdash, so that the Kohen would be roy to do the Avodah if the Mikdash and Mitzvah Hashem will be restored. And the Gemara answers that the Isa Gidol Seyar for Kohanim is similar and should be equated with the Isa of Shtiyas Yayin. And in both these surim, since they're written one next to the other, we should have a hekesh and an analogy between them. And Mashasuya Yayin Bisman Bia Hudios, Shalom Bisman Bia Shari, only when the Mikdash stands, that's called a Zman Bia, then the Torah prohibits drinking wine. But Shalom Bisman Bia, like Bisman has said, we don't have the Beis HaMikdash Shari. And that's a heter for Shtiyas Yayin. And now the Gemara is going to apply that by analogy, Af Hachanami Totu, with regard to Gidol Seyar, it's only Bisman Bia, and it would not apply in our time. So now the Gemara asks the following question on the Brisa that we learned earlier, that the Isa Shtiyas Yayin applies even Bisman Hazeh. So the Gemara asks for Asanya, we have a Brisa that Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says that Omer Ani, Hakonim Asurim Lishtos Yayin Liolam. If you're going to be Choshesh that the Mikdash in Mitzvah Hashem will be restored, then we can never allow the Kohanim to drink wine. Ma'esesh Takanosa Kalkolosam. The Omer Abai, Kiman Shazu Idna Kohani Chamre. On what basis do we permit the Kohanim today to drink wine? And the Gemara says here on the top of Yud Zayin Beis, Kir Rebbe. And this is based on Rebbe's logic that he was mata drinking wine Bisman Hazeh. And Michal the Rabbanan Asire, the Rabbanan apparently by implication prohibit drinking yayin even Bisman Hazeh. And now we have to ask the question about Gidol Seyar. According to the sheet of the Chachamim, if Shtiyas Yayin is also Bisman Hazeh, then Gidol Sa'aros, more than 30 days, should be as well prohibited Bisman Hazeh. And the answer is, my timer, what's the basis for the Chachamim sheet against Rebbe that you're not allowed to drink wine Bisman Hazeh? It's got to be based on Mehera Yibana Beis HaMikdash, that we hope and pray and take into consideration that the Mikdash will be rebuilt now. And ubi'inan kohen aroy lavoda. If the kohen will drink wine, then the leka, we will not have a kohen who's roy lavod. Again, you might say, well, they don't have to drink. Adayin, even if they don't drink, you still have a problem of Tmei Mason, but Tos already points out that we're talking about a carbon tzibur and Tumah Hutra b'tzibur. Hacha, but here with regard to Gidul Seyar, that's not going to be prohibited bisman hazeh, because even if you want to mikdash, efshar the mesaper v'ayel, let the kohanim immediately take a haircut and go into the mikdash to do the avoda. So why do you prohibit drinking wine? Efshar, if the mikdash is rebuilt, the gane purta, they could rest a little bit, the aisle, and they could take a little bit of a walk around the block, and that'll be mefig yaino. So either through sleep, even a minimum amount of sleep, that would be enough to be mefig yaino. Now they're no longer intoxicated. The influence of the wine has tapered off, and now they're allowed to go to the mikdash. Either Rabbi bar Rabbi Abba, the Amar Rabbi bar Abba, derech mil, that if the Kohen, or for that matter, anyone who drank, walks a meal, it's about the time that it takes to go 18 minutes, is Vishena, Kolshu, even if he sleeps for a few seconds, a power nap, is Mefigin es Hayayin. It removes the impact, the intoxicated state of the person. The Gemara answers, Lav miyit maralo Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rav bar Avua lo shanu. When do we say that walking around for a meal or even a small amount of sleep is enough to be mefig the impact and the influence of the wine? That's elek shasa shir revius. If he ate up to but not beyond a revius of yayin, avol shasa yosef revius, in an event that he drank more than a revius of yayin, then kolshkein shederch matridaso v'shena mishakraso. Then walking around will confuse him even more, and sleep will bring him into a higher, more intense level of intoxication. And therefore, according to the Chachamim, the Kohanim are not allowed to drink wine during our period of time post-Churban, so they can do the avoda immediately when the mikdash stands. And if they would drink more than a revius yayin, it would not help for them to walk around the block or to sleep for a minute. But with regard to Gidul Seyar, growing their hair, they could take a haircut in a very short period of time, and there's no reason, there's no justification to prohibit growing their hair. Ravashi Amar Shsuya Yayin, he gives an alternative answer. The Machli Avoda, the Kohen, if he does the Avoda in a state of Shsuyayin, he desecrates the Avoda. The Avoda is Michuleles. It's disqualified totally. It's therefore Gozu Be Rabbanan, the Rabbanan were machmir even today that he shouldn't drink wine, because if the Beis Hamikdash will be built, and if he would do the avoda with wine in his system, intoxication, meaning he drank more than revius yayin, then he's machal his avoda. We have to worry about the possibility of the Kohen being machal his avoda. But Pruei Rosh, even if he hadn't taken a haircut for 30 days and his hair is growing longer, lo machli avoda, then b'di'evid, if he did the avoda, which he shouldn't have done, with a state of Pruei Rosh, it does not disqualify his avoda. Lo gazu be Rabbanan, therefore Zman said the Rabbanan are not going to make a gzera to something which, in the worst case scenario, in any event, it would not be machal the avoda. The Gemara now raised the following objection. We saw in this discussion with Rav Ashi that Parua Rosh is not machal his avoda. Meisvei, we have a brayso that says V'elu shehein b'misa. Misa here means misa b'dei shamayim. Shesuyayinu Purei Rosh. The brayso says that if a Kohen does the avoda in a state of Parua Rosh, then he's chayav misa b'dei shamayim. The Gemara says the following: Bishleim, I understand Shsuyayin. I can justify the chiyuv misa b'dei shamayim. That's explicit in the Torah, so I don't have to question what the brayso says because it's right there in the Torah. Vayikra Yud Yayin v'sheichal teish atov anecha itcha v'vachem elol moed v'lo samusu. Clearly implying if they drank and they did the avodah, they would be chayav misa b'dei shamayim yamusu. Ela pruei rosh minolan. What's the source that Parua Rosh, if he did the Avodah, is Chayv Misa? And now the Gemara, the Bryce itself actually, is going to postulate a hekage between Shesu Yayin and Parua Rosh. T'chsiv, in this famous parsha of Yechezkel Mem Dalet, that addresses the laws of Kohanim, it says, Rosham lo yigaleach upera lo yishalechu. Uksiv basrei, immediately after the prohibition against doing the avodah with long hair. It says, Yain lo yishtu kol kohen bevoam el chatzap primis. So we have here contiguity between Parua Rosh and Shesu Yayin. Iskish Parua Rosh l'Shesu Yayin. Mash Shesu Yayin b'misa, Parua Rosh b'misa. Now, it's very strange because if you look in the parsha in the Torah itself, Vayikra Perek Yud, Vayomer Moshe al Aaron ulazar litamar b'nov, Rashechem al tifrau, Bigdeichem al tifrau, v'lo tamusu. I mean, you could have derived it straight from the pasuk. It says v'lo samusa. So the Ran answers in Masechet Sanhedrin that you can't learn anything out of that pasuk because that tzivui was not ledoros. It was only the shah. It was horosh shah to Aaron ubanov, because it was the Shiva Simei Miluin. And they're not allowed to grow their hair long, and it's a Chiyuv Mitzvah, but it doesn't mean Lidoros. So therefore, we derive it from the Parsha Yechezkel, Mem Dalet, and the equation between Purei Rosh and Shesu Yayin. Shesu Yayin, it says explicitly, is Chayiv Misa, and so too Purei Rosh, Chayiv Misa. The Gemara says, now that we know that if the Kohen did the Avodah Parua Rosh, it's Chayiv Misa, and that's based on an analogy to Shesu Yayin. Let's take this analogy one step further and apply it to the status of the Avodah B'diavad. If he did it, Ma Shesu Yayin b'machli Avodah, his Avodah is completely mechuleles, and it is disqualified. If he did the Avodah with Shesu Yayin, is af so too Pruei Rosh to machli Avodah, to be machal the Avodah. That's against Rav Ashi, who says that Pruei Rosh, although the Chayiv Misa, but nevertheless they're not machal their avoda. And the Gemara says, "Lo ki is kash lemisu is kash, avalachu avoda lo is kash." The hekech of Purei Rosh to Shesu Yayin only extends as far as the Chiyuv Misa, the punishment, but not legabe the status of the avoda, but the eved, whether or not the avoda is mechuleles. Amalei Ravina Rav Ashi. Oh, this halach that Purei Rosh Chayiv Misa b'Shemaim mekame the Aso Yechezkel Man Omra. Until Yechezkel came along, who said this thing? What was the source or the basis for concluding that a Shesu Yayin who does Avodah is Chayiv Misa before we had the pasuk in Yechezkel? Where do we derive it from? And you can't say that Yechezkel was Machadish it himself because we have a principle called Ein Novi Rashoy L'Chadish Davar. So the Gemara says that you're missing some of the rules that govern derivations. And I'll prove it to you. Amalei Rav Ashi says, L'taimech, according to you, what are you going to say about an Orel, a Kohen Orel who does the Avodah? Ha'diyamar Rav Chizda, this is Gemara in Zvachim Adaf Chav Beis and Beis. Dover Zeh, that which it says in the Mishnah in Zvachim Tesvav and Beis, that a Kohen Orel pasels his avodah in the mikdash. Mitoras Moshe lo lamadu, uvidivrei Kabbalah lamadu. We derive it from Yechezkel Mem Dalet. And how is that so? The answer is because the pasuk in Yechezkel says, "Kol ben necher orel lev, the orel basa lo yavel mikdashi." It means that we have a question here. We're going to derive the psul of Orel of doing the avodah from Yechezkel. Is Hamikami V'Yasi Yechezkel Man Omra. How do we know this before Yechezkel came along? Ella, but here you have to change the rules of the game. Gemara Gamerle V'Yasi Yechezkel V'Yaspechei Akra. That din that you find in Yechezkel is not brand new. It's based on a Kabbalah L'Moshe Sinai that was passed on, transmitted from one generation to the other. Yechezkel came along and he put it into a framework of apostle. Achanami will apply the same logic that would apply to an Orel vis-a-vis Avodah to Purei Rosh with regard to the Chiyuv Misa. Gemara Gemirale, there was already a halach l'Moshe Sinai that Pruei Rosh that did the avodah chayv misa. The Asi Yechezkel v'Yasmach Akra, and Yechezkel came along and attached it to a pasuk by being makij Pruei Rosh the Shsuei Yayin. Now here's the Girsha question, but if you have this Girsha, it says Ki Gemiri halach l'misa lachuli avodah lo Gemiri, and it means that in the framework of this halach l'Moshe Sinai that was passed down through the generations, it was limited to the Chi of Misa, did not apply to Chilul Avodah. The Mishnah stated, Kol HaKosu b'Megillas Taanit lo l'mispad is lefanav asur, lachorav mutter. This is according to Tanakama. You're not allowed to deliver eulogy on any of the days that are listed, enumerated in Megillas Taanit, but as far as li'achrav, it's mutter, lefanav is us. And they prohibited a hesped on the day before because people would say, well, if I can give a hesped the day before, maybe I can give a hesped on that day, which is designated and enumerated in Megillas Taanit. And now the Gemara quotes a brisa with regard to these Taanit and hesped, and this must be Megillas Taanit. Ilen Yomaya. Those days, the lolis anah bahon, that the Chachamim enumerated and determined to be Yom Tovim, and prohibited Taanit miksasan delo mispalu, the more severe days, meaning the greater miracle days and happy days. They got more machmir on the Isa side below mispadlon. Not only is it prohibited as far as Taanit is concerned, but even as far as hesped is concerned. And here's the list of the days. Reish Yarcha de Nisan v'ad Tamni, the first 8 days from Rosh Chodesh Nisan to the 8th. And why were these days established as very strong holidays? And the answer is going to be, I'll just to give you a little bit of a coming attraction, because on these days, the Prushim outsmarted the Tzdukim, so to speak. And in 2 controversies, which we'll see about, the Tzdukim actually won the day. First, as far as the first 8 days in Nisan, Itokim Tmida. The Chachamim, the Prushim, were able to overcome the counter argument of the Tzdukim with regard to the Karban Tamid. The Tzdukim claim that the Karban Tamid is Michel Yachid, meaning it's a Nedava. Whoever first come, first serve, whoever offers a Nedava to bring a Karban Tamid as a Nedava from his own personal funds. That was the argument of the Tzdukim. And we'll soon see why they came to that conclusion. But the Chacham rejected it, and they held that a Karban Tamid has to come Michel Tzibur. And on that period of time, when they argued against the Tzdukim, at the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Nisan up until the 8th of Nisan, that's when they actually defeated the Tzdukim, and everybody agreed that the Karban Tamid is Michel Tzibur. The Tzdukim would say that the Yachid will volunteer the Karban Tamid, and they proved it from the Pasuk. At the end of Shmos, it says, and the whole Pasuk is written in Loshen Yachid. So the Chacham responded, "Es karbani lachmi li shai reach nichochit tishmeru li lakriv li b'moado." And there it says regarding the Karban Tamid in Parshas Pinchas in the plural, and we derive from that a Karban Tamid has to become Mishal Tzibur, meaning for the money in the Trumas Halishka. And when did the Chachamim overcome and defeat the Tzdukim? That was in this period of time between Rosh Chodesh Nisan and the 8th of Nisan. And to lo misfad lahu, we don't fast, we don't eulogize during those days. Umitamne be ad so. Period. So that's round number 1 as far as the first 8 days of Nisan being established by Megillas Taanit as happy days and days in which we don't eulogize, and certainly we don't fast. Now, what happens from the 8th day of Nisan and on? Mitamnia Bay, from the 8th day of Nisan, ad sof mo'ada, until the end of Chag Pesach. Now, the end of Chag Pesach, we're talking about 2 days of Yontif. Itosiv Chaga Dishavue. They established a holiday because of the victory that the Chachamim overcame the Tzdukim with regard to the question of Mimachas HaShabbos. The Tzdukim, or the Baitusim, they argue that Chag HaSukkos must be on a Sunday, that's Mimachas HaShabbos in their reading, and it's going to be on the Sunday after the first day of Yontif. So in other words, let's say the first day of Yontif of Pesach was on a Monday, then we wait to bring the Omer until the following Sunday, a full 6 days later. That's how they interpreted Mimachas HaShabbos. Chacham, on the other hand, are going to prove that Chag HaShavuos is 50 days after Motzei Yontif Rishon Shel Pesach. On Yontif Rishon Shel Pesach, just 1 second, that's going to be Shabbos, meaning, what do I mean Shabbos? Not the 7th day of the week, but I mean in the language of Mimachas Shabbos, that first day of Pesach is called Shabbos. And Mimachas Pesach means Sunday, the Sunday after Pesach. Pesach meaning the first day of Pesach. So we're not going to wait till the next Shabbos and then the Sunday beyond. And at what point in history did the Chachamim defeat the Baitusim? It was actually 50 days after the first day of Pesach. Because on the following day, that's the day that they brought the Yom. So now, at what exact point in the calendar year did the Chachamim overcome and finally defeat the Baitusim? This was during the period of time from the 8th day of Nisan until the end of the holiday of Nisan. So the holiday of Nisan, of course, starts on the 15th. So we count from the 8th till the very last day of Pesach. That's the period of time that in Megillas Taanit was determined to be days of celebration with an Easter Taanit and an Easter Hesped, because that's the period of time in which the Chachamim defeated, they squelched the Tzdukim. And therefore, Mispad Mahon, it's such a great simcha that we won't allow even fasting. Not only Taanit, that goes without saying, but even fasting. I mean, even Hesped. Omar Mar, the Gemara Yasakash on the Brisa, it says in the Brisa, Mereish Yarcha the Nisan Adhamne Be Itakum Tmida, that we classify, according to Megillas Taanit, the days from Rosh Chodesh Nisan until the 8th day of Nisan as the days of celebration for the din of Korban Tamid, which now is understood as a Korban Tzibur in the full sense of the term, and therefore they made a takana delola mispad bahon, that there should be no hesked. So the Gemara immediately asks, Lamali mereish yarcha, why do you bother mentioning Rosh Chodesh? Lema mitrei b'Nisan, you should have started counting with the second of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Gufei Yom Tov the Asur. Yom Tov itself, Rosh Chodesh itself is called the Yom Tov in Baloscha Perek Yud. Ubiyom Simchaska b'Moadechem b'Rosh Chodesh. So Rosh Chodesh is certainly a Doraisa, and we are enjoined from Hesped the Taanit because of the element of a kind of Simcha of Rosh Chodesh. So why do you have to tell me that we begin the Isser Hesped on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And why? Because of the victory over the Baitusim. No. What are you talking about? On Rosh Chodesh Nisan, there's no Heter, Taanit, or Hesped because Rosh Chodesh Nisan is a Yontif. And a Yontif is also a Hesped. Amar Rav, you're right that Rosh Chodesh itself is also. But lo nitzcha lesser es hayom shalafon. The day before Rosh Chodesh would not be also b'tainis. That's true for rest for 11 months out of the 12. But on Nisan, the day before Rosh Chodesh Nisan is going to be also b'hesped b'tainis by virtue of the defeat at the hands of the Chachamim of the Baitusim with regard to Mimachas HaShabbos. Mar says, wait a minute. I need this whole business about the success of the Prushim in order to justify the day before Rosh Chodesh as an Isur Hesped V'Tainis, Shalfan of Nami typically. Let's go back to the universal rules that apply through Megillas Tainis to Avile Yom Shalfnei Rosh Chodesh. That the day before Rosh Chodesh, insofar as Rosh Chodesh itself is also Behesped U'B'Tainis, the day before becomes also Behesped U'B'Tainis. I don't need to invoke the success of the Tzdukim. Gemara says you're making a mistake. Rosh Chodesh, Doraisa L'Boichis. When do we prohibit the day before? That's only in the list of days that find themselves in Megillas Tainis. Those are the Rabbanos. So whatever Nisan took place on those special calendars. But as far as Rosh Chodesh and Yom Tov Doraisa, the Torah calls it Moadechem, the Isur Hesped V'Tainis is Doraisa. We don't need Chizuk by adding Erev Rosh Chodesh. We only add Erev Rosh Chodesh in the case of Nisan because of the success and the triumph of the Prussian. Hisanya, I'll prove this to you from a brisa that Erev Rosh Chodesh in and of itself would not be also Behesped V'Tainis, if not for the fact that Megillas Tainis tells us about the special victory that took place in the first 8 days of Nisan. Hayomim ha'elek suvim Megillas Tainis, as far as the Isur Hesped V'Tainis in those days that are enumerated in Megillas Tainis, is lefneim ulachreim asurim, but Shabbosos v'yomim tovim hein asurim lifneim achreim mutarim. So you see clearly that with regard to Megillas Tainis, and now we're saying that the first 8 days of Nisan are also Hesped Tainis by virtue of Megillas Tainis, then we attach a day before. But as far as Rosh Chodesh B'Toras Doraisa is concerned, then it comes on the Shabbos Yom Tovim Hein Atzvet Asurin, but Lifnei V'Acherim Mutarim. So my Hefresh Vein Zel is there. Halol Divrei Torah Ein Tzrichim Chizuk. Halol Divrei Sofrim and Divrei Sofrim Tzrichim Chizuk. So we extend the Isur Hesped V'Tainis to include the day before, whatever day it is in Megillas Tainis. In our context, the day before Rosh Chodesh, but Rosh Chodesh itself, or for that matter, any Doraisa, like Shabbos and Yom Tov, which generates an Isur Hesped Tainis, we don't need a chizuk to go back and prohibit the day before. Omar Mar, we saw in the brisa before, Mitamya Bei Ad Sof Moadaya, from the 8th of Nisan until the end of the holiday, which would be approximately, shall we say, let's see, 52.5 weeks. Itosiv Chaga D'Shvuasa. They established a holiday for the victory about Chag HaShavuos. I'm sorry, just 1 second. B'Nisan ad Chag HaPesach. Oh, so now we're in the second period of time, from the 8th of Nisan until the end of Chag HaPesach. And during that period of time, they defeated the Baitusim with regard to the issue of Mimachas HaShabbos Tisfru Lachem Chavishim Yom. And how did this takon express itself? The mifsad that the hesped is us. So Gemara asks, what are you telling me? Ad sof moada? Lamali ad sof moada. Why do you have to tell me in Megillas Taanit that the Easter goes and continues until the end of the Chag? Lema ad hamoed umoed gufa yontif aviyos. You didn't have to mention the end of the Chag. Just mention the yontif itself. Amar Papa, Kida Omar Rav, just like we saw Rav's answer at the beginning of this brisa, we'll apply it now to the end of the brisa. Lo nitzracha, we don't need to mention Rosh Chodesh amongst the days that are Isur. Ella, here on the top of Yud Chesam and Aleph, lesser Yom Shalafana. And the reason why, says Rav Papa, we mention Rosh Chodesh amongst these days is for Yom Shalafana. And Hachinami, here too, with regard to Chag Pesach itself, you're saying it's already also, but Lo Nitzchacha Ela Lesas Hayom Shali Achrav Isru Chag, the day after Pesach. And though that day after Pesach will be also in Taanit and Behesped, had it been only because of Pesach, then Lo Haya Nes Hayom Shali Achrav, because Chag Pesach is Doraisa, and Divrei Torah Ein Tzrichim Chizuk. So here we got up to Kiman. Let's make a note of it. On the top of Yud Ches Amid Beis. Thank you so much. And again, wishing you Chanukah Sameach.